you raised some issues how the growing national debt has a connection to the public policy around housing.
Yep. And so, I think that this is we started this series looking at the housing sector for several reasons. I think first, this has been an area where disproportionately Americans have felt the impacts of persistent inflation over the past years. We've seen this reflected obviously in elevated mortgage rates, and in the rising costs that renters are facing. And so what we really sought to explain was that, when we look, for example, at mortgage rates, we know, for example, that yields on treasuries are indirectly influence these rates. And so, the 30-year fixed mortgage rate moves quite closely with the 10-year treasury rate. And so what we wanted to show is that, for example, in a time where we are see elevated interest rates, mortgage costs can be impacted. We also know that kind of on the supply side, we worry about the impact that rising net interest costs on the debt can really crowd out some of those other. Well, first off, can create kind of a crowd out effect for increasing the rate of private investment costs. But also, as we think of when we see fights on Capitol Hill every year as to the squeeze of the non-defense discretionary budget, and so many housing priorities of the federal government being included in that small 14% sliver of the pie, we get concerned that there's a real threat where if we are spending more each and every year just to service the national debt and drawing those resources away from these investments in housing affordability and supply that have tremendously hard to have high returns on their investment, and we know are politically very popular, that's a real concern. And so what we're showcasing is that, especially within this industry, it's not a time to panic, but it is a time to really recognize that there are very close connections between what we see kind of in the broader macro environment and how those threats are felt both on the housing demand side, when it comes to folks, wanting to buy their own home or rent a new home, and also on the supply side,